Hi, everyone. I'm Carl Bierock. Welcome back to the Jaguar Football Podcast. And on today's episode, we are just jam-packed with stats. And also, we're going to pick the brain of head coach Nick Bear of Seckman Football. Coach, so good to see you. Hope you had a wonderful spring break. And, the grind of football over at Seckman doesn't stop. You're very busy.
Yeah, 10 hours of flag football yesterday. Our first big day, we finally had a break in the weather and it was good to get out on the field. And, we have over about 400 young athletes between our co-ed and all girls teams playing. So it was a lot of fun to finally get out there and watch the work that they've been putting in. So really good, positive experience on day one.
Good deal. I know the weather's finally now cooperating. I look out and I can see the sun. Always a welcome feature there. But wanted to kick off the podcast a little bit different this time, Coach, and get your thoughts. The coaching community lost a great one. He's decided to step down from Francis House School District. Wanted to get your thoughts on that because I imagine that, football was better with Coach Brent on the sideline.
Yeah, I personally don't know Coach at Francis Howell, but definitely a guy that I follow and a program that I'm always keeping an eye on because they're really one of the top teams, top programs and communities in the area when it comes to athletics. And with Coach, him and I we share. You probably don't know who I am, but we share a lot of similarities. He's 37 years old. I'm 36. He's head coach. He was going into his seventh year. I'm going into my seventh year. So, when it's like you read something like that, and it's kind of like, oh, it would almost be like if tomorrow I walked in and said, "Hey, I'm not head football coach anymore. Somebody else do it." And it just kind of was a real reflection piece for me, and kind of just really trying to draw a lot of parallels. Going through the article, Coach is raising a family. He cited, a lot of the things and a lot of the burdens that head coaches deal with as far as, essentially now I'm Seckman Football CEO. The hands-on coaching, every day of players is something you do less and less, and it's more of the managing of players and the managing of coaches, and just management of a 200-person organization. And in the article he kind of cites, wanting to kind of get really back into just being able to coach. And also, he's a guy raising a young family. I think, mentioned he has a couple young kids, and that's kind of really hitting home. I mean, this year, we're losing two coaches I've been coaching with for the last 4 and 5 years. And Coach Earhart and Coach Heinlein, both of them, have resigned this season, and, each for their own reasons, but they're both, young guys raising young families. And it's just kind of one of the realities of our job. And it's a tough one to do. You make a lot of sacrifices, and raising a family and doing it at the same time it's a balance.
I imagine so, because one thing I've learned just by talking with you as we record these podcasts, that you're there. And, I have a son who's in the junior JAG program. He practices during the summer till 7:30. I see you out there. And so, I'm just wondering, do you find this happening a lot in your field? I was doing some research, prior to recording this, and you mentioned, I think it was last fall or something, you went to a conference and, that all the head coaches get together. Is this something that comes up quite frequently? And is there like a support system for those that support the kids playing football?
Yeah. Well, I'm very blessed. I mean, if you've spent any time around Seckman football, that's where my family is too. My family, including my parents, my wife and 3 boys, we're connected to Seckman football. And it's honestly, at this point, it's a part of our life and our family and just kind of how we operate. My wife and I, if you did not know, it's a real made for TV movie. She's the senior cheer captain. I'm the senior football player captain. And, that's where we met, senior year of high school. And, kind of ever since we've been together. I think we're going probably that's over about 18 years ago. half a lifetime ago. So when we got married, she knew exactly what she was getting into. As far as oh, this is the football life, and the things that a football coach's wife has to go through and support and things like that. And now all my boys are of age. I've got a freshman on the football team. My middle son, he plays on the seventh grade team, so I'm down there at the junior Jaguar practices, and then my youngest, he'll actually be playing his first year on the fourth grade team next year. So my oldest two are not happy about that because I made them wait till sixth grade. But the youngest kid gets everything, and he might get a cell phone when he's 10 too. Probably not, but so he gets to play a little bit earlier than they do. So they're giving me a hard time about that. But so yeah, I'm at Seckman football all the time. We spend a lot of time here, but that's where my family is, and they're very supportive. And I know that's just not always the case. If coaches have families that are less connected to the team and what we're doing, a lot of times it could just feel like you're spending a lot of time with other people's children, right? Which is why I like to tell people nobody does more with less time than we do. When I have coaches, I try to respect all of their time that I can, and give them that time to spend with their family, be at home. If we can have a meeting over text message, we'll have a meeting over text message. There's no reason for us to come in and spend time away from our families. So it's that balance. It's really hard to find, and it's just something it's just I'm not trying to pour sour milk on this or cry poor me or poor coaches or anything, but it's something that no one's really doing for the pay. I mean, if I did stop coaching next year, I would make maybe 5% less than what I would normally make without coaching. Right? So not life changing, but surely life changing in the sacrifices and the time that I make. But this is something I truly enjoy to do, and it's something I want to continue to do and hope to do for the next 16 years. And to do that, you really have to really try to find that balance. We've been having a lot of fun lately. We've been winning, and that certainly makes things a little bit easier, makes everybody happier. Um, but what happens when that monster starts to eat you? So you look at Francis Howell, and I don't know Coach Brent from Francis Howell. Like I said, I just follow their program from afar. Follow him just because him and I, like I said, a lot of similarities as far as age, and my kid's a little older. I got started a little earlier than him, but hey, that's how it goes. But look at them. He's a state championship winning football coach. That they're constantly winning 8, 9, 10 games a year. They have thousands of people at their home games. Like I said, one state in 2022. This last year, they went 4-6. Doesn't mean that they aren't a good football team. They play a very tough schedule. Lost a couple very close football games to some good football teams. But I got to think. Well, if they went 4-6, did the fence start to chirp a little bit? Right? How was the peanut gallery? Maybe a little much. And sometimes it can be, right? And it wears on a coach, and all the issues that you deal with off the field, and the program that you have and the things that you're doing have led to success, and the one time it doesn't, maybe they turned on them, right? And it's like, shoot, you know, we're a year, 2, 3, don't matter. Who knows? What if that happens here? Is the monster going to eat me? Right? So, it's just kind of one of those things that when I read the article, obviously I'd see him talk about his family and things, but then in the reality, okay, you look at the schedule and you look at their record this year. Was all the outside factors, all the outside noise, a little bit too much? And that's why I talk about, I try to find that balance. And I know, but look, I hope some people know this, but we're going to lose more than one game eventually. Right? Like, there's going to come a time when, Seckman football goes 7-4 or 6-5. That's still a good season, right? And we talk about that's not always how we measure the success of what we're doing. Surely, like, it's more fun when we win, and things like that. But I'm always working to find other ways to make sure, to measure success, and the things that we're doing are right. And so the year where the ones in the loss column go a little up, the noise might get a little louder, but I can still know that we're doing things the right way.
No, appreciate you sharing your insight there because I imagine that being a head football coach is a very small, tight knit community. And there's not a
Mhm.
lot of folks that have that honor of being a head football coach at a program, and especially the success that Coach Brent had, and certainly the success here.
Mhm.
Do you ever get concerned? And you mentioned off the top of the podcast, two of your coaches decided to step down from their roles. How do you combat like turnout, the turnover or burnout, or just
Yeah.
keeping everyone energized? For what is a year long grind.
Yeah, it's kind of it's always on the back of my mind. I mean, I talk about, and I keep, one thing I talked to our new athletic director about when I meet him again and he starts at his new role, it's one of those things. I know I plan on coaching for 16 more years, but my biggest concern is I'm going to turn around. There's going to be nobody there to coach with me. Um, the reality is there's less teachers getting into the business. There are teachers getting into the business and getting out, 3 and 5 years. So, how many more old timers or how many good football coaches with experience, am I going to have? Because I know I can't do this thing by myself. So it's kind of one of those things where I'm always trying to balance and keeping communication with my coaches and letting them know, hey, look, if we got to get you here at this time because you got to do this responsibility, we can. Or, for me, I honestly, I share a lot of the burden of the offseason stuff. So my coaches know, hey, I just need to be locked in from that third week of July all the way to November, and then, after that, coach is going to keep me updated, but, the time isn't necessarily going to be there. So it's kind of, one of those things going back and forth. And yeah, I talked to, a lot of head coaches and everybody kind of deals with things in their own way. Like I said, for me, I personally just try to find, you know, the successes. Ultimately, I know my final judgment is not going to come from how many football games I've won, right? It's going to be come from the relationships I've made in my life and things like that. So, I'm not going to be judging the amount of football games I've won, when this whole thing's said and done. So that's kind of how I keep things in perspective. And I know if I'm working to form relationships and do things the right way, um, it'll all be good. So, like I said, and we're riding that high wave now. And if that wave ever dips, I'll look back, I'll remember these, and then I'll remember the work it takes to kind of really get back up there. So, I don't know. Carl, how many football teams do you think are in the state of Missouri?
If I had a bet, I'd say around 250 or so.
Okay, so between 11 man, so there's 11-man teams, which is what we are, and then there's some smaller called 8-man teams. There's still football teams in the state of Missouri. They still operate. There's around 350 high school football teams in the state of Missouri. How many do you think have a new head coach every year?
Okay, well, knowing 350, I'll say turnover is 10%, so 35.
So this year, right now, and there's still going to be more changes and things like that. There's actually 64 head coaching changes in the state of Missouri this year, and usually that average falls right around 65 to 70 coaches a year, in programs that have new head coaches. That's over. You're talking 20-25% of the teams every year are starting over, looking for a new football coach, right? So you can put that over, like, so I've been here for 6 years. So in the time I've been here, over those 6 years, nearly 400 teams have gone through new head coaches, or have 400 times teams have gone through, right? Obviously, we have coaches that have been at certain places for 10, 15, 20 years. But you look at a team like Northwest, I mean, shoot, they're on their fourth coach since I've been here, right? So, it's definitely one of those things like, any profession, but um, it's just a large number. And I point a lot of the times to, we do a lot of good things. I'm not some mastermind genius or anything like that, but the continuity of us doing the same thing over time and not constantly changing the culture and things like that, that's what's helped us be successful. I talk about it, we're never, um, we're never rebuilding anything. We're simply reloading it, right, with new dudes. And that being around here, that's kind of what's really helped it. So, you know, it's just an
Those
interesting
numbers that you
stat.
shared
And
kind of startling because I think about states like Florida,
hmm
Texas, California, big football states. You think about, Texas in particular. I mean, it's just live and breathe. And I know there's a giant stadium out in Alabama that the high schoolers get to play in that would
hmm
rival, any facility pretty much here in the state of Missouri.
right.
Is this turning into a bigger problem, or do you feel it's turning into a bigger problem, or are we just scratching the surface with that turnover? Because I mean, gosh, 25% rolling through coaches, you don't get that continuity.
hmm
Probably, I'd fair to say the product on the field suffers. You know, is there like a little wake up call that maybe something needs to change or ways around
Well,
it?
like it's kind of it's a hell of a question, Carl. I really I really don't know. I mean, like I said, I find my way to cope with the job, and I said I'm lucky that my family's built into and around secular football, and I have the support. But you know, some coaches also kind of they like I've built my own monster here with the success, right? And I hope it doesn't eat me if we ever don't have a lot of wins in the win column. But some coaches they get on that grind, and you're talking the scout film and they're talking the practice planning, and we we don't practice longer than an hour and 45 minutes to 2 hours. I've worked for guys we practiced for 3.5 hours, right? I think the old joke, when I started was, hey, the cheer team is practicing longer than the football team. Yeah, well, the football team's got a little bit more energy than the cheer team at this point. And we've shown that that works. Um, so some coaches just they kind of really take too deep of a dive, and then you get in this spiral. And when you have put that much of yourself into something and you don't have the success, I think that's kind of where that crash can happen. So I don't know. It's interesting. I feel like if 20 to 25% of the doctors at Mercy Hospital were getting out of the profession every year, it might be we're changing jobs every year. It might be in the news or something. I don't really know. So.
Yeah. Well, I just
Uh,
think, there's careers that, and especially, the younger people, maybe a couple years out of college, they're not maybe fully enjoying or taking in the fact of where they are now, and they're looking for that next opportunity.
mhm.
So, there might be a little bit of that in there as
Oh
well.
yeah,
But
there's certainly coaches, jumping to new spots and things like that too. So
well, certainly we appreciate your insight there, and it's something that again, we love stats and love
mhm.
looking at numbers, and that kind of transitions us into the work that your program has been doing in the weight room. That's one of the big focuses of the off season is get stronger and faster. How are things going in the weight room?
Yeah, I know we hit on a little bit last on our last talk and our last chat. As far as what we're looking to do and the numbers we're trying to hit. Okay, we're building a football team for next year. Okay, how can we build these pieces, with the strength and the speed, and then where do those? And really, in July, we start really trying to figure out, okay, where do those pieces fit, right? Okay, and we had our first test there right before spring break, and I got this chart over here, kind of really shows you our numbers and the growth we've had, since I took over. From 2019 was my first season. Okay, so we're talking benches of 225 or more. So that first couple years, we're talking six. I only had six guys on the team with benches of 225 or more. Then we had four. All right. Then, hey, the wins start coming in 2021. And then now you see some really big jumps here. So 34 and 37. Last year's team was 37. And then you think of the year with Trent Enlow, Tommy Gabar. Okay, that year we had 34. The last 2 years we won 10 games, right? Um, this year's team, we tested a week ago. We have 35 guys on the team that bench 225 or more. And this is honestly a number I expect to grow. We'll test one more time here before the summer. This number could very easily get to 40. We'll have some plus or minus. We'll have some guys that are choosing not to rejoin the team. But we also had a couple guys that are injured that'll get an opportunity to bench at this. It was right around spring break, so some people hit the cruise a little early and missed the max. So, when I see 35 guys right there, I'm pretty pleased. Would love to get that number to 40, but now, now I'm just getting greedy. But but really solid effort there. The boys will tell you squat's my favorite lift. Really, as far as athletes are concerned, if they said, "Hey, what's the one lift I could do?" Obviously, you're going to do more lifts, but what's the one lift? I want to be a better football player. Well, then you better be able to squat. You better be able to hit depth, and you better be able to drive a barbell up and out of the hole. And with our squats here of 365 or more, that's a pretty solid squat, right? Um, we're talking 5'5", then we jumped to 15, 35, 33. Last year's team had the most with 42. Right now, this year's team, we're sitting right at 39. So a little bit behind last year's team. But once again, I feel like I have a few guys that are going to make that jump going in the next season when we max out again here. We're lagging a little behind in our squats of 405. That's kind of that benchmark where you're slapping 4 plates on each side. It just looks cool. Okay, 405 is just a number. But 19 guys with squats of 405, that's pretty solid. Power cleans of 225, 4, 5, 9, and then boom, jump to 26, 31. 22 and 21, this is the lift really we're talking about. It's a little bit more complex, but it's explosive. It's athletic. It requires movement. And that's really something that we value at every position on the field, right? Big and slow really ain't going to get it done. So right now we have 21 guys there. I see that number climbing. If a Class 6 varsity football team could have 20 guys, power cleaning, 225 or more, you're going to be in a pretty good spot. Always want it to be more, but pretty happy there. Right now we've got 43 guys totaling 750 or more, and that's just kind of that arbitrary break-off number. If you could total 750, you can go out there and defend yourself on a varsity football field. And we got 43 guys that I feel pretty confident physically can defend themselves if they go out there. But if you're not going to total 750, you better be pretty good at a few other things. You better have some speed. You better have a little bit different mindset. So to have 43 guys right there right now, this time of our offseason, very promising for sure. And then lastly, got to keep an update on our freshmen, okay? That's really where that base starts, okay? And I'm really hard on this group and really feel like I want this group to go a little bit further as far as their commitment and strength in the weight room. Because I've kind of seen, look, if you don't start until sophomore or junior year, it's too late, right? It's the base that comes in freshman year, and then we can build off that sophomore, junior year. You don't have time to live senior year. You're playing football, and then you're done, right? It's time to go. So right now we're at 13 guys over 650. It's actually really interesting. Of those 13, 11 of them are actually over 700. And I've never had that many freshmen over 700. So we're very top heavy, okay? And then the we're a little bit more in the midsection. I need to try to drag these guys up a little bit. So really pleased with these numbers. And I think they're going to continue to grow. And I expect all of them, to have go up by 5, 6, or 7 here when we get the opportunity to max out before the end of the school year.
These numbers are really interesting because if you look at like the 2019, 2020, I know that was the COVID year is like the baseline.
Right.
What is this going to look like in another 4 years?
As the team continues to grow and you're always just trying to inch it up a little bit more and set the next bar. And, I'm sure this year's team say, oh, hey, last year's team had 42 guys at 365. We want 43. I found out if you put it on a board, they will eat each other to try to get to the top of that board. Right. So, hey, our team, our group here, we got to make sure we have this many cleans of 225. So, maybe they get it up to 25 this year. And well, now next year's team wants 26. Well, who's going to be the next team to get 30? Right. So it really drives that competition and each team really takes pride in their year and what they're doing. And we've kind of have a culture where it's already set in stone and these guys want to continue to improve and hold the line, hold the standard. So it's a lot of fun.
Looks great. I love those numbers. And it seems like you're very into the data and analytics side of football as well. Looks like you have some new technology that you would like to share with the group.
Yeah. So, everybody knows, or, if you've listened, okay, we've really emphasized, strength and my first 4 or 5 years, I was telling people, look, we are unapologetically strength-based, going to get stronger. And then, if we ever get to a point where we're too big and slow to move, but we're bench pressing 1,000 pounds, then we'll start worrying about speed. Well, we have not really got to that point. We have good strength now to get our team to that next level. It's that speed factor, right, that we really want to make sure we're emphasizing and working on. So I just told you guys, I just said it. If I want to emphasize something, I got to put it on a board and I got to make a top 10 list so that they can all kind of uh, get at each other and try to compete and compare themselves to other people. So, yeah, recently had the Booster Club purchased us a gate timing system. Okay, so these are lasers. So if you go to a combine, this is the Dasher Silver system. You run in front of one gate, it picks you up, and then it times you to that next gate. And it's a really simple way for us to now have the opportunity to time our athletes. In various different lifts and different distances that really matter to the game of football. Obviously, when you're talking speed, everybody's heard of the 40-yard dash. Carl, you've heard of the 40-yard dash,
Oh,
right?
yes.
What do you think your 40 is?
Oh, I was off big time on the number of coaching turnover and number of high school. So let's just say I had sharp elbows when I played basketball, but wasn't
Okay.
super fast.
Well, Carl, I'm sure whatever it actually is, you would probably take off some time from that, right?
Oh, no doubt about that.
And that's really the truth with the 40. Okay, it's so publicized. Obviously we have the NFL Combine. Talking about who's the fastest guy, who's running a 4.4 or 4.5, and things like that. So of course our kids hear that and they think, oh my goodness, if I don't run a 4.4, I'm nothing. Or if I don't run a 4.6, I'm slow. If you ran a 4.6, you'd be on television. Okay, that's why I had to finally tell my guy. Where I get my timing system out there, and we start timing, and 5.1, 4.9. Fastest guys getting 4.8, 4. Coach, your timer's slow, boys. I love you, okay, but it ain't the timer, okay. It's just what the 40 is one of those. It's just guys don't have very realistic expectations with it, right? If you ask me what I ran in high school, I ran a 4.69. It was probably a 4.8, right? So I we don't have it for you now, but like I have this chart and really kind of set things in perspective. When it comes to high school athletes, 0.01% of high school athletes will run a 4.5. 0.01 of high school athletes will run a 4.5 40. I've coached one guy that could do that. And we dedicated an entire segment to him a couple podcasts ago, right? In
Yep.
Cole Rubel.
Yep.
And it's kind of, and you know what? That's kind of where if a guy is confused or, oh, I think I should be running, you think you're, I should be running a 4.6. Oh, you think you're a tenth slower than Cole Rubel? Okay. I don't, I don't know. You got about 0.3% of guys running anywhere between a 4.5 or a 4.6. So once again, less than 1% of guys. So okay, hey, coach, hey, I tell you what, I run a 4.6, 4.7. All right, 1 to 2% of high school athletes run a 4.6 to a 4.7. So it's just kind of one of those things where keep these things in perspective, So look, when I'm building a team, if I got a guy running a 4.7, I'm salivating. That's the top of the chain for us, right? You're talking Cam Benson, you're talking Seth Maxwell, Mason Mraz, a few of our speedier guys on the team, right? No, and guess what? Those guys are running 4.7s. I'm happy. They're mad because they think they should be running 4.6s. So if I got younger guys, hey, they run a 5. Well, I'm slow. Well, no, you run a 5, son. It's okay. Do we want to work on that? Do we want to increase that speed a little bit? Yeah. Are you going to get down to a 4.6? No. Okay. And if somebody's selling you a speed program to tell you that, they're probably lying. Well, coach, I ran a 4.6 with my trainer, and I started out at a 5.2. Well, I guess your check cleared, son.
It's that
Look,
hometown ref, right? Or
yeah, I
hometown
mean,
timer.
it's great to go out there and get the work in, but it's just realistic, expectations. So I'm happy if I get a 4.8 or a guy running a 4.9. We'll work with that, right? If I got a guy running a 5 that's going to continue to work, or hey, you know what? I haven't had many linebackers that run over a 5-1 or a 5-2, right? So it's just kind of one of those things where the 40 is just one of those skewed things, skewed timing systems, and a lot of people will use it in the wrong way. And guess what? Just like a few other things, all the dudes are lying. Okay, everybody's lying about their actual time. So with this timing system, I'll time their 40s just so they know them, but I'm not putting a whole bunch of stock into it. We can do a bunch of different things with this. I like to record what's called a flying 20 and a flying 10. So it's actually, you get about a 10-yard buildup, and then we measure your speed those 20 yards, right? How many times you're running more than 20 yards on a football play, right? So you build it up. So you got 10 yards to build up your speed. The gate picks you up at the 20-yard line, and then it ends your time at the goal line. So say you start on the 30, build up, picks you up at the 20, ends on the goal line. I like that because, well, they don't know what Sauce Gardner's 20-yard fly time is, So instead of comparing themselves to NFL athletes, they're comparing themselves to their peers. Oh, hey, okay, well, you ran a 2.32. Great. Well, somebody else in class ran a 2.29. Okay, I'm a little bit behind him. But I can be happy with that 2.32 because the fastest guy in class ran a 2.19. So I'm really close. So it's just one of those things where they're not comparing themselves to the dudes they see on television. They're comparing themselves to the dudes that live in Imperial Valley and go to Sequin High School. So we do that. We'll do a 10-yard fly. There's what's called a pro agility, a 5-10-10. You'll see that one at the combine too. That one measures a little bit more start-stop ability to change direction, which is something that we value. So no, it's a really neat system. I really appreciate the Booster Club for allowing me to purchase it. It's technology, can be a little pricey, but I feel like really this is something that's going to continue to drive our program and get our guys that want to be faster, right? We have a lot of guys on the track team this year. That's that first step, right? Now tracking it and then building on it and setting up leaderboards and competing against each other. That's the second level, and that's really going to help us here, in a few years when our conference gets beefed up a little bit, and that'll be something I'm happy to talk about in a future podcast for sure.
Please hold that thought. That is definitely a topic for another day. But no, it's just really cool to leverage all this technology. You think about the drone. You think about, just like tracking the progress in the weight room. Now using this technology to track the 40 time. And again, like you're saying, it's all relative, right?
Our replay stuff on the sideline.
Yes.
The ability, you see Tom Brady looking at the iPad on the side. Well, you used to see Tom Brady looking at the iPad on the sideline, smashing it on the ground. Well, our guys get to watch the iPad on the sideline. They won't be smashing it on the ground. But you know what I'm saying? Like, we have this ability with our kids now, and these are things that we weren't doing 5, 6, 7, 8 years ago. So it's fun to do and to provide that opportunity. Of course, I had a few senior players, Jack Compton, Ben Lewis, Ambrose, and a few guys that graduated like, what? We didn't get a timing system. I said, guys, it's just the same group that didn't get the locker room, right? Well, we didn't have that locker. I said, it's not about what you don't have. It's about what you built, right? You cannot have this stuff without you. So don't worry about what you didn't get. Focus on what you built. So it makes me feel better when I tell them that. I don't know if it makes them feel better, but
yeah, it's always good.
But we're always moving forward. I'm always I've never, when I taught math, I never taught the same lesson twice, and I've kind of taken that same mentality into what I do now.
It's gonna be interesting to see what the new tech is going to bring. Is it data and analytics like doing the NFL, like they're putting chips in footballs? What is all that going to bring to the table at the high school levels? Like, it's one thing to have the data. It's what you do with it. How can it help
right.
you?
Well, yeah.
That would be the next step. So
exactly.
Look forward to that. And of course, we've been flashing this on the screen here. We had a signing day, Coach, right before or right after or during spring break. Want to thank the folks in our community for coming out and being a part of something big going on. You think about the last year, we had new turf installed, all the things that you mentioned, new locker room, all the technology, new scoreboards coming in.
Yeah, we were able to take really that first step. I know we introduced the scoreboard idea a couple podcasts ago, and a lot of work being done behind the scenes. Kelly Kuby, our booster club president, is really driving all the work, and our booster club treasurer, Lori Bunting, are really driving all the work being done with this. And that Monday of spring break, we were able to really solidify our first five sponsors. Those first five sponsors are actually getting us towards that first payment, and the ability to sign a contract and have a brand new 13 by 26 digital scoreboard on the field next fall. So it's really exciting stuff. And where does it go from there? What do you do with the scoreboard? How does it enhance the experience of the game? That's kind of that next spot. I'll be coaching a football game at that. So um, but we do have some really neat opportunities. We're going to be teaching. There's going to be a class this year at Seckman that's going to be designed towards programming the different things, coming to the video board and running the video board. So you're talking real life experience for some of these kids. I've got a couple football players that I think would be great to help with that. Maybe they're not on that creative edge, but they can provide the kind of the football side of it and what would be cool for that. So I'm excited for a few of our guys to get that opportunity. And it's just really cool to bring in these five sponsors, that want to support our community and kind of make them feel special, and show them that we appreciate, the investment that they're not only making, in our booster club, in our football team, but also in our community. And, really want to work to promote those guys and things like that. So yeah, are you running these pictures of me shaking
Yep,
hands here,
we
Carl?
have them here, and
Uh-huh.
we have their names and businesses and
Mhm.
organization on the Facebook page. So please, check them out, support them. They're the big driver to make this opportunity happen. So we're so
Yeah.
grateful for their support.
Yes, no doubt, and we'll continue to share more information about them and how they're supporting us and what they're doing. And honestly, like I said, I know I'm front and center in the pictures there, but I'm just there to shake hands and kiss babies. The real work is being done by Kelly Kuby and Lori Bunting and the rest of our booster club board. And when that thing goes up, they'll be the people we want to thank and honor for getting that done.
Well, we certainly look forward to that day. And speaking of a day, Coach, the baby of this podcast turns one. I can't believe it's been a year. First off, thank you for taking your time out, participating in this. No one, as far as I know, is really doing anything like this.
Hmm.
Also, want to thank the Jaguar Nation for their support and viewership and watching and tuning in. The last podcast alone had over 1,300 views, and collectively, we're over thousands upon thousands of hours of views. So we couldn't make this happen without the support of the community. So, my thanks to everybody tuning in and watching this, and of course to you for your support in participating.
Yeah, it's wild to think we've been doing this for a year already, and kind of really this time last year we're kind of conceiving the idea. And our first couple may have been pretty rough, but I like to think. I mean, I'm not quitting my day job, and neither are you. But I mean, I feel like we've really progressed, and the show continues to get better, and it's been a lot of fun, really diving into some real topics, around the game of football, and got to talk a little bit about coaching burnout and turnover. And I'm sure every profession faces things like that. So I'm not here to cry woe is me. I love my job. I what do they say? If you love what you do, you never work a day. I mean, that's kind of cheesy, but at the same breath, like I just show up. I don't ever dread a day of work coming here. So my goal is to continue to feel that way for the next 16 years through the ups and downs. And if the community and the people listening and the parents continue to have that grace and that patience with me, and kind of know me and my intentions with the team and how I'm heading, I appreciate that. So I won't always make the right choice, but I do appreciate you not making my life a living hell.
Well said. And that's not the goal, I imagine. But no, please be sure to check us out on the social media channels. Like and subscribe, interact with this. I thought the last podcast was really good. There's some that are B plus. I would rate the last one A plus, but that's just me. But be sure to like and subscribe, and also check out our partner over at Livestream STL, where we're grateful for their support. And Coach, you already hit upon it, but wanted to allow you to close us out and just give us your thoughts as we round out April, heading into May, and before you know it, camp begins.
Yeah, hey, we're buzzing through it. A parent meeting coming up April 23rd. So you're talking 2-3 weeks. We'll already be rolling out some booster club information. I'm going to be heading to the middle schools again here next week just to kind of touch base with that incoming freshman group, solidify a few things. And, we're rolling through. I'm about 65, 67% of the way through my one-on-ones with the boys and then the players on the team to kind of really see, set the expectation for next year. So, yeah, soon we'll be breaking down tape and talking about what happened on Friday night. So looking forward to that.
All right. Well, Coach, again, thank you so much for your time today and sharing not only what is happening at Sekman in regards to new technology, the results in the weight room, but also just sharing your thoughts on the coaching community and some of the obstacles that you and your colleagues face on a day-to-day basis. I mean, the season is year long, so we really appreciate your time today.
Yep. Thank you, Carl.
Okay. Thanks.